And CBS News congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes is with us now from Milton, Florida, for another town hall today. So, Nancy, is this just venting, or do people really believe that they're having a real impact on lawmakers for when they return to Capitol Hill?
I think it's both, Vlad. I've talked to a lot of progressive voters, a lot of Democrats who say that they were just motivated by concerns about this president to come to town halls when they've never attended town halls in the past, just to get it out there. And you can tell when these town halls actually start that they're just desperate to get it out of them. And that does lead to some of the scenes that you've observed where everyone's talking over each other and you really can't make much sense of what anybody is saying. But they say they are angry about a number of things when it comes to Donald Trump. They feel that Republican lawmakers should be pushing harder for him to release his tax returns. They don't like some of the things that he has said about minority groups. They don't like the directions that his policies are going in, and they want Republican lawmakers to stand up to him. Interestingly, as you saw in that piece, there are a number of areas where Republican lawmakers simply aren't willing to take the hit for Donald Trump, and they say, well, that's a great question. I agree with you. I am going to stand up to him if he says that the press is the enemy, for example, of the American people. So, they're not going to take a bullet for him on some issues, but on others, they are standing by him. And they say, I may not agree with everything that he says, but I agree with a lot of his policies, and I am going to work with him to enact those policies, even if some of the people who are currently attending these town halls disagree with them.
Nancy, we've covered a few of these town halls now, and it occurred to me that not only do the lawmakers have to answer questions about policy and the Trump administration, but here you have a president who is frequently tweeting out his feelings. And he tweeted out how he felt about what he called the so-called angry crowds, that they were planned activists. And I wonder if some of those angry people in the crowds have now begun to ask their lawmakers about those tweets.
Oh, absolutely. The tweets are a big feature of these town halls. And what some lawmakers have said is, look, I try to ignore what he says on Twitter, and I try to focus on his policies. And, if you distrust, as you heard Senator Cassidy say, if you just have a blanket distrust of him, then we're not going to get anywhere. But the reality is that particularly for some Democratic voters, if they feel that they can't trust some of what he says, then they don't know what they can trust coming from him, and they're not sure that their Republican lawmakers are going to make the right choices either. Now, a lot of Republicans who have held town halls have openly contradicted the White House when it says that these are simply paid protesters who are trying to manufacture drama for the benefit of the cameras. They say, no, these are real constituents with real concerns. I may not agree with all of their concerns, but they are my constituents, and I have to respect what they have to say the same way that I would respect what other constituents had to say if Hillary Clinton was elected and they had concerns. So there is a bit of tension here between the White House and Republican lawmakers themselves when it comes to just how legitimate these protests are in the first place.
Nancy, the question I think that many people will have right now is, will the Democrats be able to channel this anger into something tangible, because we are still 2 years away from the midterms?
That in large part depends on these Democratic voters themselves. Do they go to a couple town halls and pat themselves on the back and say, I spoke my piece and I made a fuss, and now hopefully my lawmaker has gotten the message? Or do they keep up these protests at town halls and in other locations, the same way you saw with the Tea Party movement several years ago? Because Democratic lawmakers say, look, these protests actually give us a lot of momentum, a lot of energy, if you will, to sort of stand our ground on certain issues that we wouldn't be able to do if we didn't feel that we had people behind us pushing us to do that. That's something very similar, again, that we saw from Republican lawmakers in the midst of the Tea Party movement. So that is really a big factor. Do these indivisible groups that are popping up in districts across the country, do they maintain this kind of activism, or does it sort of die away?
All right, Nancy Cordes. Thank you so much, Nancy. I appreciate it.